The next element we looked at was the value stream. Super important again, because this is really telling me how my customer is getting the value. And the sample that I've shown you here is an extract from an insurance industry where there is a claimant who is a triggering stakeholder who is getting the value, which is a claim, right? And what are the stages that this person goes through to get that claim, right? Completely from an external customer-centric lens. So this tells me how this person is getting the value that the company is delivering. And the third one is the information map, which is information. That was the third element, right? So very important again. So this helps me define the vocabulary of my business. For example, customer can mean different things to different people. If you're in IT, your customer becomes the end business user. If you're in sales, your customer is really somebody who is paying us money, right? So this map helps us clarify the definitions of your business elements and provides a shared vocabulary so you can start identifying your capability models from here. And the fourth one is the stakeholders. We talked about this fourth element, which was stakeholders. So stakeholder map is another important view, right? So this is very important because it helps me understand if there is a change to a capability, who should I go to, or who are the right stakeholders who I need to be involving for decision making, so that I'm not doing things in silo, I'm having the right people in the conversation, assessing the right level of impact that a change could bring to them, right? So this was, again, a struggle pain point for the typical challenge for business transformation. So essentially, the most important thing in the slide is the interconnectivity. There are these 4 elements, which is super critical, yes, but when you connect them together, for example, stakeholder capability map, when you cross-connect them, extremely powerful, which gives me a very good view. Capability and value stream connection helps me understand, okay, so this is my value stream, so great, I want to focus on this. So what are the underlying capabilities that is impacted if I should make a change for one of the stages in the value stream? So that I can start prioritizing my initiatives and rationalize them. Capability and information. Information really delivers how you start your capability map. So it's all cross-connected, and a cross-mapping of these artifacts can be extremely, extremely powerful to drive some of the transformation activity. So with that said, I want to show you a view of how the components of business architecture helps drive a successful transformation and the outcome. So I've drawn out a sample diagram here. So on the top, you see the value stream. So let's say your organization has different, like 20 value streams. So I've just shown you 2, which is acquire product and service product, right? So in acquire product, there are different stages. Open website, the customer opens the website, and they choose a product, and they pay you. So that's a value stream. I've simplified this terribly, so it's not going to be this simple in real life. So let's talk about payment, which is a value stream stage, right? And then there are underlying capabilities under that. Let's say order management system is a capability, or customer information management, and I've highlighted that. And connecting the payment to customer information management and the respective operating components, right? So that could be a strategy and also the business component. Strategy, stakeholders, initiatives, information, metrics, requirements process, and components of IT architecture. So let's bring all the pieces together here. For a business transformation effort, if we know how customers are getting the value and which value stream is impacted by the strategy change, right? So let's kind of zoom out again. So transformation is all about changing your business model or making or thinking about new ways of delivering value, right? So it's a customer-centric approach. So super important to understand what is happening with the customers today, right? So if you're able to map out the value stream, and then you understand how customers are getting the value today, and by the change of your strategy, which is a business transformation, right? If you understand what are the impacted value stream stage, and if we have a good assessment of what capability is impacted for that underlying value stream stage, right? So you also have a capability assessment where you do your color coding and maturity level analysis. Then we will know how to start, where to start, who to involve, which is really the bottom portion of the slide, talking about initiatives, stakeholders, and requirements and process. So this comes to your operational level of executing on some of those initiatives. I have done this in practice, and if this is done right, this can be really powerful, and it can be a game changer. So trust me, this is just not theory. This is from my experience that I'm sharing. So again, kind of writing the story again. For a business transformation effort, if you understand the value stream stage, the underlying capability, then you'll know how to start, where to start, who to involve, and you're able to deliver an actionable result through prioritization and rationalization. So you avoid the redundancies, you avoid operating in silo. Because of capability, which is a bridge between strategy and execution, you have the component where you have the traceability to your actual goals and strategy. So, connecting the dots. I want to go back to the slide, which was really the challenges for business transformation. And I had highlighted this saying I want to talk about these 4 challenges and how EA, which is business architecture, helps solve for this. So looking at those 4 challenges, cross-mapping the capabilities, value stream, information, and stakeholders, which we talked about from an artifact standpoint, you are able to clearly articulate the strategic intent and also measure the outcome because there's a clear traceability through capability maps. You are able to make the right decisions. You are not going to be in silo. You would be able to logically bundle your initiatives and rationalize your initiative approach. Value streams help gain an understanding of how customers are acquiring a value, understand the gaps, and also help to do an impact assessment from a customer lens. So you're really shifting your approach from an operational perspective to a customer-centric perspective. And finally, with the baseline artifacts that we develop through these cross-mappings, you are able to get clarity on what next. So I understand my strategic goals and intent. Great. I have a starting point where I can start looking at my capability map and my value stream map, and then figuring out where there's an impact and what needs to change. So you know, and who to involve with your stakeholder maps, right? So it's a very clear path forward where you can start executing on the right priorities. So business architecture is really powerful if done right. I've talked a lot about the what. I'm not planning to address the how. That I'm sure a lot of you all have questions on your mind. Okay, great, you talked about theory, but what next? Like, how do I put this into practice? Happy to connect offline and talk more about that. And I'm going to hand off to Akshay, who's the next speaker, who'll talk a little bit about solution architecture. But thank you, everybody, for your time and attention.
Thank you, Amrutha, for setting the stage, literally. Hey, everyone. I'm Akshay Patki. I'm solutions architect for people technology team at Atlassian. I come from consulting background, and I'm very passionate about technology and rationalization and optimization of technology to drive value for the business. And I also love riding my bike, especially in Marin County. Amrutha talked about business architecture, and business architects are at the 10,000 feet view, thinking very strategically about the business. Then there are enterprise architects. They focus on one or more value streams, more like 2,000 feet view. The broader in scope, multiple domains. They have eye for strategy and technology both. And then come the solution architects who are on the ground with a lot of focus on the technology in depth, but also have an eye on the strategy part, especially the competencies. So let's circle back to Amrutha's slide earlier. So these are the typical areas of enterprise architecture. And the business architects, they focus on the business domains of enterprise architecture. And solution architects focus on the application and technology part. And while the solution architects focus on the technology inventory, the roadmap, and building scalable platforms, they also have focus on capabilities, because all the work is centered around capabilities. So let's see how. As Amrutha called out earlier, capabilities are very powerful artifacts if done right. And here I have taken example of generic capabilities that are applicable to a typical business. A typical business would have a product, a service, they'll have a marketing team, a sales team, people, finance, legal, risk, compliance, all of these. And for each capability, the architects work with the stakeholders and assess these capabilities from various angles. And as we said earlier, the solution architects, they focus on one or a couple of these value streams. So for example, people or HR is a capability, and if you drill down further, the level 2 and level 3 capabilities could be around the recruiting, compensation, retaining your talent, and offering the core services, onboarding. So all of these are capabilities, and in next slide, we'll take a look at how we can evaluate these from various angles with different stakeholders and work with them to plan a target state of these competencies, and then how do we get there? So we'll take a look at that in coming few slides. So let's see how we can apply different competencies, different filters on these competencies. For example, investments. Business leaders, they are investing in their R&D and the product, so they want to know how much they are investing in each capability. Compliance team, they want to know, are our offerings compliant? Are we compliant with GDPR in Europe when we are operating? Finance and business leaders, they always want to know how much we are spending. We earlier heard in the keynote about reducing cost, and all CIOs are asked to reduce cost. We all are working with at least dozen different partners and hundreds of vendors in each area. And procurement wants to know how are these partners doing? Are they up to the task? Is there any lag in their delivery? So looking at that angle, the next is the CIOs and the leadership. We just heard they have been asked to reduce the number of SaaS vendors. So yeah, they are looking at it from rationalization angle. How can we reduce the tech debt and align with business better and optimize? So all of these things are centered around competencies. And in addition, a solution architect can use various reporting, analytics, and data to help these stakeholders make these decisions. For example, what are the number of applications I have by capability? And maybe recruiting is a very wide space, and you need to attract candidates from all different geographies. So you have more vendors in that space versus compensation, for example. And how much are we spending year over year? And is that spend proportional to the end users we have? And for each of these capabilities, the services that we have, the platforms, the products we have put in place, are they meeting the needs of our end users? Is that, let's say, Workday you're using for benefits, is it a good fit, or you need to replace it? So, and from business criticality point of view, compliance, you have to get it right, otherwise you are at the risk of losing your business. So it's highly critical. So evaluating all your investments by capability from criticality and functional fit. Okay. It's really important. And so once you know you need to optimize or rationalize for a capability, and you apply your other set of superpowers to evaluate these options, you vet vendors on your functional and non-functional requirements, You take into consideration the project constraints, that is the resources you have, cost, time, quality, and the technology options out there. And then there could be some cases where it makes sense to build something internally because the outside tool or technology is not meeting your requirements. So all these things put together give you a holistic idea of all the internal, external, financial, technical factors, and you work with all these with your stakeholders, and you make a list of projects you want to tackle, a list of things you want to change, do transformations enabled by technology, and you would prioritize the list of these initiatives and put them together on a roadmap. And I recently came back from a Hawaii vacation, so if you sense any Hawaii theme, that's pure coincidence. So yeah, working with your stakeholders, you'll put together a roadmap. And let's take a look at some of the common pain points. Stakeholders, they have a tool on their mind. Does it ever happen? Never, right? Your total reward person wants to buy XYZ tool, but talent person wants to buy ABC tool, and they both have overlapping functionality, and these tools do not talk to each other. And then your support team is navigating through all the tech details. What really helps here for an architect is objective assessment of all these options and putting together a framework to make decisions. And we at Atlassian call it DASI, decision framework, where we have identified drivers and then the contributors, and then who is the responsible for the decision. A lot of the times, architects do not have the actual authority to spend, to change the course of things. And it may feel like you are on a boat, like Life of Pi. But what can help in these situations is data-driven discussions. Show them the data. We earlier heard how many users are actually using this application. Is this giving you the return on the investment that you wanted? And a lot of architects come from consulting background, and we want to be the evangelists for technology, tell the story, convince them to change the course so that you can optimize and rationalize your tech portfolio. And it could be a lot. On an average, a company has 200 SaaS investments across different capabilities. And it could be a lot to keep track of the spend, assessment, how are these from business criticality and functional fit point of view, and when are the contracts due. All of these things could be overwhelming, but what can help is automate, integrate, plug Workato, and visualize all these with dashboards, and socialize these with your stakeholders so they are also able to see the nitty-gritty details that are really important. And trends keep changing. So you have to be on top of your research, bring in the thought leadership that your stakeholders are expecting, and attend conferences like Systematic. So with this, in closing, I want to say be the IT or business system partners that your stakeholders need by practicing concepts of enterprise architecture. Keep your IT investments on track. Evaluate, optimize, and rationalize your investments. Scale up your platforms, products, and systems to support the growth, and partner with your stakeholders to define future roadmap. Thank you. Now, Amrutha and I will take questions, right?
So we're going to have a few minutes of Q&A. We're going to have mic runners. So if you just have a question, raise your hand, and someone will come give you a mic. But please pick their brains.
Fantastic session. Thank you, by the way. How do you ensure that once you're able to realize some of these models that you bring in terms of innovation, that you're actually achieving and managing and tracking the outcomes? And get the credit.
So just so that I can summarize the question, so how do you ensure that there is the value realization process after you apply the model? Yeah. So traceability, most important, because where we get lost is you have an objective and then things can get easily lost when you're trying to operationalize them. Never lose the traceability aspect in every stage when you're decomposing your strategy to execution and actually delivering on initiative. That's number one. Number two is once you deliver on something, retrospective becomes extremely critical to really measure back, saying, did this pay back on what we expected it to do? So I'd say 2 steps, traceability and retrospective and measuring the outcome. And we do it in different ways. So I typically, depending on the initiative, so quarterly retrospect to make sure that it's meeting the goals, or it could be looking back every month. It depends on the project. But fundamentally, these are the 2 steps.
Hi. So we, where I work today, we don't have architects per se, but we sort of expect the people who are working on solutions to all own a piece of good architecture. And so my question to you, besides the fact that you're probably like, that's a terrible idea, what sort of growth do you offer? What sort of advice or mentorship do you provide to the people working on solutions so that you don't have to be actively participating in everything that's built?
To be very honest, I don't think solution architects are the right people to drive what I talked about. Probably what Akshay talked about is something that they should be focused on. In practice, when I've talked to global leaders in business architecture space, about 80% of the companies have business architects within the business. So let's talk about the operations function. I'm not sure if you guys have an operations function, who are literally the translator of what business wants to asking for initiatives. And I'm talking about a slightly different variation of the ops function. It's not really sitting and looking at field level changes and tactical updates. It's defining the initiative roadmap. So I'd say try to nurture them to become the business architects, because business architects are most successful when they are attached to the business function. There are business architects like me who are in the IT org. It's going to be a struggle, definitely, because getting invited to the right conversations, having an understanding of the strategy, that is going to be very hard. It's mostly listening in after all the conversation has happened, which is not going to be really helpful to contribute. So getting inserted into the conversation itself becomes extremely critical, and that is going to be successful if you're on the right team or on the right side of the fence. So if you're able to use your operations people to mentor them and to really think like business architects, and I'm sure you would be applying business architecture without calling it business architecture. I don't think you would be doing like capability models, but you're going to be thinking around that, right? So really that formalizing that thought process of how to think like architects and apply them would really help. So I would say it's not necessarily that you should be standing up an architect function like full-blown, like an IBM sort of an organization, but you can be very agile and really empower your operations team to act and think like one.
And I want to add that although they are focused on one particular application, they are in their firefighter mode or whatever, always encourage them to ask why we are implementing this software, this application, and what value is it delivering, what capabilities it is supporting, and where is it integrating. So thinking of the overall architecture, technical architecture, and ask them to be curious about contracts, like how long is this contract, and how many users are we allowing with this purchase, and what's the compliance requirement, and how we are staying compliant. Like, there are so many technical aspects right around the thing that they are doing. If they are curious, they will learn, even if not at the strategic level, but within that capability, there is so much to know that will help them grow into the architecture space eventually.
Other questions? Yes.
Thank you, both of you. Very nice presentation. Question I have is about agile methodology and architecture frameworks fitting into agile. The way what I understood, as I'm hearing more, it feels like more waterfall or a top-down and like that. You have to know everything up front, what you're trying to achieve it and whatnot. Talk to us about how it fits in agile, because nowadays all CIOs have got this word of enterprise agile and agile IT and whatnot. So
Yeah.
how does that fit in?
You want to take that, or
Sure.
I can do that?
Okay. Coming from the companies, Atlassian and Asana, that have the products to enable Agile, we cannot go away from Agile. All these transformations that we are doing today are Agile in nature. We scope it in a way, we take smaller scope, implement it, see how it's going, what's working, what's not working, and change the course. And could be in various ways. Instead of launching it globally, you take a local aspect, maybe just one geo and launch it. Not all the products you will roll out, you will just try. Similarly, when we rolled out Workato, our team, People Tech, was the first to get our hands dirty, try it out. And as we built further, other teams were inspired by our success, and then they uptook it. So yeah, I think even though on the roadmap it looks like we have 4-year roadmap, nobody has it. Nobody can define a 3-4 year roadmap and stick to it. It's a constant changing world. The macroeconomic conditions are changing. The tech landscape is changing. So you have to continuously revise it, work with your stakeholders to reprioritize and be agile.
What I would add is this felt like a lot, I understand, and I don't think any of us or any of our organizations has patience to deal with this. I came into an organization which is in a very hyper-growth. Stakeholders have minimal patience to even talk about capability maps. One, they don't understand because it feels too academic. We are not like professors trying to lecture something here. We want to drive things through actionable results, right? So starting with a baseline becomes really critical, right? The baseline, and I've done this, so the baseline might take about couple of months to actually build out stuff, and that's a good ramp-up period when you start. The rest has to be turned around in incremental fashion. That's kind of the agile way to look at things, right? If you just start by making these incremental changes, I'm afraid that you're not thinking through like dependencies and impacts to other areas. So at least having a baseline, which is a good representation of your current state, and then implementing the changes in a very agile fashion would be the best approach to do things. Again, start where you can. This is just a framework. It doesn't have to be this way. It depends on the appetite of the organization, the support you get from the stakeholders, which side of the fence you are in. Being in IT, this is really hard to do because business has other priorities. Nobody can spend like 2 days with you to sit together and help you understand the business, right? I came into the organization, and I think after 3-4 months is when I started developing the capability model for like a baseline starting point. And yeah, start where you can is what I would say.
Thanks for the nice presentation. So I heard you mention the words tech debt. And as somebody from a dev background and consulting background myself, I don't think that people stress upon tech debt and other housekeeping projects that we have. Like, my question to you is like, how do you get customers to empathize with us on projects? Because business moves ahead like a freight train, right? And we, as technology people should, always have an eye on the clutter that's in our systems right now, the landscape that, you know, hasn't panned out like it was originally planned or whatnot. Like how do you convince? Like, I would love to hear your thoughts, suggestions, and experiences on such projects.
If I'm not wrong, the question is, how do you really convince your stakeholders on the value of what a tech debt initiative is?
Right.
Or,
and how do you translate that into your the value
business
stream?
value?
Yeah.
Do you want to
It's probably your area.
Okay. As the solution architect who is very close to the area and all the applications, you should be aware of your good areas and bad areas where you are being very resource intensive and not getting that much value back. And it could be some of the manual processes that you have to do because the system doesn't support automation, doesn't have the APIs to load that data or whatever. I think it's a struggle to convince your stakeholders, but also you have to have that cadence with your business stakeholders, be it bi-weekly or monthly or quarterly, but in those forums raise these things that we have a team of 30 and we are spending these many hours, and instead if we automate this or we replace this technology, it could save us some time. It will, and what's the value for them? Emphasize that these resources will be freed and they can do that XYZ things that you have been asking for. I think, yeah, you have to put it in their language and try to convince and then get funding either from the CIO or the stakeholders, but it has to, that's where I mentioned the term evangelism, data-led evangelism. You have to show the data where you have tech debt and how it's hurting, and be the proponent of change.
One thing I want to add is articulating the impact of a tech debt, because the business teams, I don't think, if you go say that I want to start a project to solve for the tech debt, what does that mean, right? So talking about the impact for the business and what is going to happen if you don't do that, calling that out might be a good approach to make it feel it's important and it needs to be on things that you want to be delivering. Yes? Hi.
Sorry, hey, Amrutha. So I come from the business side, and what you're all saying is basically I run marketing at Workato. So one of the things that at least what we understand means when it comes to tech debt, we don't understand that, to be very honest. But what we do understand from a business language is going slow to be able to go fast. And that's something that every marketing, every sales, every team understands that. Because they change sales processes, you change sales methodology, you change various channels in marketing in order to go slow, experiment something, and then go fast. So if you put it in their language, if you say, hey, we need to reduce tech debt, it's like, what the hell, I don't care about your tech debt, you go fix it. But if you explain it to me in a term which understands that, hey, we need to go slow here so that we can go faster later, I'll understand that. And then you translate it accordingly.
Yeah. Impact to velocity, absolutely. Other questions? Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time and attention. It was a pleasure sharing my experience. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.